The fluorescent lights of the registrar's office hummed quietly overhead as I slid the final form across the counter. My palms were sweaty, my chest tight, but my heart was bursting with excitement. After years of waiting, of dreaming, of working myself to exhaustion, this was the moment. I was finally here. College wasn't just a dream anymore, it was supposed to start today. The clerk, a tired woman with kind eyes, tapped on her keyboard. Her eyes scanned the screen, then froze. She frowned, tapping a little harder as if the computer must have made a mistake. "Can you wait just a moment?" she said, her voice careful. My throat tightened. "Is something wrong?" She bit her lip, then looked back at the screen. "It says here that your tuition account is empty." I blinked. For a second, the words didn't make sense. Empty? No, it must be some mistake. My parents set up a college fund for me when I was a kid, supposed to cover everything. She looked at me with pity, the kind of pity people use when they know something you don't. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but it shows a withdrawal. The entire account was cleared 2 weeks ago." My stomach dropped to the floor. I felt the blood drain from my face. Cleared. That wasn't possible. That money had been locked away for me. It was the promise my parents made. The one thing that had kept me going when they ignored me in every other way. I don't understand," I stammered. "Who withdrew it?" The woman's eyes softened. "It says, guardian withdrawal. That would be your parents." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest burned, my hands trembled. My parents. My own parents had taken the only thing I'd ever truly had for myself. I staggered out of the office, the sound of students laughing and talking echoing in the halls around me like a cruel soundtrack. My hands fumbled for my phone. I dialed my mother's number with shaking fingers. She picked up on the third ring. "What is it?" "I'm busy, Mom," I whispered, my voice breaking. "The college account. It's empty. They said you took it. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake." There was silence on the line for a moment, then a sharp laugh. "Oh, that. Yes, we used it." My breath hitched. "You? What?" "You used it. That was my college fund. That was my future." "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped. "Your sister needed it for her wedding. Do you have any idea how expensive venues are these days? The dress, the catering, the guest set all costs money. What good is wasting it on books and classes when your sister is starting a real life?" Her words hit harder than a slap. My chest caved. My world tilted. "Wedding? You stole my college fund for a wedding." My father's voice cut in, his tone cold and final. "Enough. We don't need your whining. Your sister's happiness comes first. You'll survive. You can take out loans or get a job if you're that desperate. Family tradition matters more than your little ambitions." I stood frozen in the hallway, the phone pressed to my ear, students rushing past me on their way to new beginnings, while my future was ripped away in a single phone call. My legs wobbled, my heart pounded. "Dad!" I whispered, my voice cracking. "That was my chance. You promised me. We promised nothing," he barked. "You should be grateful you even had that money to begin with. Don't act like we owe you something. Your sister's wedding is more important than your silly degree. Nobody remembers a diploma, but everyone remembers a beautiful wedding." And then my sister's voice, sweet, smug, dripping with venom. "Hi, sis," she sang. "Thanks for the contribution. You should see the dress, so gorgeous. Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows you helped pay for my big day." I could hear the laughter in her voice, the mockery. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't even pretending. She was reveling in the fact that my dreams had been crushed for her spotlight. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. "You can't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "You can't just steal my future." "Oh, but we can," she purred. "Because, unlike you, I actually matter to this family. You're just extra." Her words sliced through me, sharp and merciless. For years, I had suspected it. For years, I had felt like the outsider, the mistake, the invisible child they tolerated but never cherished. And now, for the first time, they weren't hiding it, they were saying it out loud. Something inside me cracked. Tears blurred my vision, but beneath the pain, a spark ignited, a spark of anger, of resolve, of something sharper than I'd ever felt before. I hung up without another word. The world around me felt unreal as I stumbled outside, the late afternoon sun glaring in my eyes. Students hugged their parents, posed for photos, held shiny new student IDs in their hands. I stood alone, empty, betrayed, a hollow ache spreading through my chest. But even as the grief crushed me, the spark inside me grew. If they thought they could steal my future and bury me in their lies, they were wrong. They had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. That night, I sat alone in my room while the sounds of wedding planning floated through the house, my mother chatting excitedly about flowers, my sister squealing about her honeymoon, my father bragging about the guest list. Each laugh was a dagger, each word was a reminder that I didn't matter, that they had traded my future for her spotlight without hesitation. I stared at the acceptance letter on my desk, the college emblem printed proudly at the top. My vision blurred, but my hand clenched into a fist. No, I whispered to myself. This isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Because they had stolen my fund, they had stolen my trust. But they hadn't stolen my determination. And one day, they would regret choosing her wedding over my future. People always say you can tell which child is loved more in a family. I used to roll my eyes at that idea when I was little, trying to convince myself it wasn't true. But deep down, I always knew. My sister was the sun in our household. She didn't just shine my parents, made sure she was the only one allowed to. And me, I was the shadow. It started small. On my 8th birthday, I remember sitting in the living room surrounded by half-inflated balloons I had taped up myself. I waited eagerly for my parents to bring out the cake. But when the door opened, it wasn't my cake hit, was my sister's dance recital costume. My mom rushed in, squealing, "Look at her. Doesn't she look beautiful?" My father clapped proudly, snapping photos like paparazzi. And me. My cake sat forgotten in the kitchen until my aunt awkwardly carried it out later. Candles melted into a puddle of wax. Everyone sang, but their eyes stayed on her twirling in sequins. That was the first time I realized my place. The years that followed were just echoes of the same story. Report cards pinned to the fridge, hers, not mine. Medals displayed in the living room, hers, not mine. When I worked myself sick pulling straight A's, my father barely glanced at the paper. But when she scored a most improved ribbon at a school track meet, he invited the neighbors over to celebrate. It wasn't just neglect, it was intentional. Whenever I tried to stand out, they pushed me back into the shadows. I remember. In middle school, I auditioned for the lead role in the school play. I practiced for weeks, memorizing every line, rehearsing in the mirror until my throat ached. I got the role. My teacher told me I had real talent, that I could move audiences. But the night of the performance, my mom and dad didn't show up. Why? Because my sister had a sleepover with her friends, and they couldn't leave her alone. I performed my heart out, 2 rows of empty seats where they should have been. Afterward, when I came home still in costume, my mom just shrugged. Plays don't matter. Your sister needed us. Every moment of my life felt like that sacrificed. For her spotlight, and yet I held on to one. Promise. When I was about 12, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My mom was bragging to a relative on the phone. Of course, we've set aside money for her college. She's the smart one. At least she can get into a good school. I froze in the hallway, my little heart thumping. They'd noticed. They'd actually saved something for me. That day, I asked them about it. My dad nodded gruffly. Yes, don't worry. There's a fund. As long as you keep your grades up, you'll go to college. That's one thing you can count on." Those words became my lifeline. Every time they forgot me at the store, every time they spent hours cheering at my sister's cheer competitions while leaving me to walk home alone, every time they made me feel invisible, I clung to that promise. There's a fund. You'll get out. You'll build a life that doesn't depend on them. So I pushed myself harder. While my sister spent weekends shopping at the mall, I stacked shelves at the local grocery store. While she threw parties with friends, I stayed home studying. By the dim light of my desk lamp, my teachers praised me, wrote notes like exceptional potential on my papers. My guidance counselor told me I had the discipline to make it into any university I wanted. And every time someone praised me, I thought, they'll see. My parents will see. When I get into college, they'll finally be proud. But I should have known better, because the more I accomplished, the colder they became. When I got accepted into my dream college, the letter with the bold crest at the top, I came running into the kitchen. Grinning so wide my cheeks hurt, I waved the letter like a victory flag. My mom barely looked up from her phone. Nice. Don't brag to your sister. She'll feel bad. My father just muttered, "You'll manage somehow." My sister, sprawled on the couch, smirked. "You won't even last a semester." Still, I told myself it didn't matter, 'cause I had the fund. That was their promise. That was my ticket. In the weeks leading up to the semester, I started packing my things. I bought notebooks, pens, a cheap laptop. I made a little list on my wall. Dorm essentials. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was walking toward something of my own. Meanwhile, my sister had started talking about her boyfriend and how she wanted the wedding of the century. She was barely 20 and already planning flower arrangements and color schemes. My parents laughed indulgently, promising her everything she wanted. I remember one night overhearing them whispering in the living room. "We'll need at least $40,000 for the venue deposit," my mom said. "Don't worry," my dad replied. "We'll figure it out." What she deserves. The best. "What about the college account?" she asked softly. My heart skipped a beat. I pressed my ear against the doorframe, my pulse racing. My father sighed. "It's just sitting there." And really, what's more important, her degree or her sister's wedding? Family comes first. I froze. My chest constricted. I wanted to run in and scream, "No, that's mine. That's my life you're talking about." But fear rooted me in place. What if I confronted them and they really did it? Maybe it was just talk. Maybe they wouldn't go through with it. So I stayed silent. And that silence cost me everything. 'Cause 2 weeks later, I stood in that registrar's office, the clerk, telling me my account was empty, and realized they hadn't just threatened, if they had done it. They had taken everything I'd worked for, everything they'd promised, and handed it to my sister, wrapped in white lace and roses. And the worst part, they didn't even try to hide it. When I confronted them, they acted as if I was the selfish one for even asking. That night, as I lay awake in bed, I thought back over every moment of my childhood, the missed birthdays, the empty audience seats, the forgotten dinners. It all came rushing back like a tidal wave. This wasn't about the money. It was about a lifetime of being second place. And in that moment, as their laughter about centerpieces and bridesmaids drifted down the hallway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They had taken my fund. They had taken my trust. But they hadn't taken my fire. And one date, the very wedding they sacrificed me for, I would make them see the truth. The days after I discovered my college fund was gone, blurred together into a haze of anger and despair. I stopped eating properly, barely slept. My dreams of unpacking books in a dorm room, of walking through campus with a backpack and a smile, all of it dissolved like smoke. Instead, I lay awake at night, listening to the laughter drifting from my sister's room as she FaceTimed her bridesmaids about centerpieces and spa days. Every laugh was a knife twisting deeper. I tried confronting them again. One evening, I stood in the living room, fists trembling at my sides. How could you take it? That was my college money. You promised me. My father didn't even look up from his newspaper. We did what was best for the family. Stop acting like a spoiled child. Spoiled. The word almost made me choke. I had spent my teenage years working part-time jobs, sacrificing weekends, studying until my eyes burned while my sister had everything handed to her. And I was spoiled. My mother rolled her eyes. Your sister's wedding is more important. Education will always be there. But this only happens once. And then my sister appeared at the top of the stairs, her voice dripping with cruelty. Don't worry, sis. You can still go to college. Maybe in 10 years when you can finally afford it. Meanwhile, you get to watch me walk down the aisle in the dress your money paid for. Isn't that sweet? Her laughter echoed down the hall. I turned and walked out before they saw my tears. For weeks, I felt like I was drowning. I avoided friends. I stopped checking my email because every unopened college message was just a reminder of what I'd lost. I walked the neighborhood aimlessly at night, the glow of houses mocking me with scenes of families eating dinner together. Families that didn't trade their children's futures for flower arrangements. At my lowest, I considered giving up entirely. Maybe they were right. Maybe I didn't matter. Maybe I was destined to live small and invisible while my sister sparkled in the spotlight. But one day when I was sitting on the steps outside school with my head buried in my arms, someone sat down beside me. 'Twas my literature teacher, Ms. Ramirez. She had been my mentor for years, the one adult who actually noticed me. What's wrong? She asked gently, and I broke. The story spilled out of Mitha's stolen fund, the betrayal, the hopelessness. When I finished, she sat in silence for a moment, her eyes full of quiet fire. Listen to me, she said finally, her voice firm. Your future doesn't belong to them. It belongs to you. They can steal money, but they can't steal your mind, your determination. You've always had the drive, so find another way. Scholarships, jobs, grants, there are doors everywhere. Don't let them convince you the door is locked. Her words lit something inside me, a reminder, a spark. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote a list. Options. Apply for every scholarship I could find. Apply to the college about emergency aid. Pick up more shifts at the grocery store. Start tutoring younger students for extra cash. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy, but it was mine. The weeks that followed nearly broke me, but in a different way. I woke up before dawn to work at the grocery store. I went straight to tutoring. Sessions after school, teaching math and English to middle schoolers. Then I studied until midnight, my eyes heavy, my hands cramping from writing essays for scholarship applications. My sister mocked me constantly, still playing student. She'd sneer as she paraded around the house in designer clothes. Bought with my money. I hope you're not expecting Mom and Dad to brag about you at my wedding. Nobody cares. I bit my tongue. I smiled through clenched teeth, because deep down I knew something she didn't. My worth didn't depend on her approval or theirs. Every rejection email stung, but every acceptance fueled me. Slowly, I pieced together enough scholarships to cover tuition. It wasn't easy. I still had to work double shifts and scrape by, but it was possible. The first day I stepped onto campus with my own hard-earned ID card. My chest swelled with something I hadn't felt in years. Pride, they hadn't stopped me. But the struggle wasn't over. College was brutal. While other students went out for pizza or parties, I scrubbed tables at the cafe until my hands cracked. While they studied for one class, I juggled 4 jobs just to stay afloat. There were nights I fell asleep on my laptop, drool smearing my notes. Sometimes I wanted to quit. Sometimes the weight felt impossible. But every time I remembered my sister's mocking voice. Nobody cares. Your money paid for my wedding. Those words became my fuel. I didn't just study, I dominated. Poured everything into my classes, determined to prove that my stolen fund wouldn't define me. Professors started noticing. One wrote, "You are one of the most driven students. I've ever taught. Another recommended me for an academic competition. I started winning small grants, then larger ones. Opportunities snowballed. And while my life rose from the ashes, my parents and sister barely noticed. At family dinners, they still rolled their eyes when I mentioned school. "Don't bore us," my father grunted. "Talk about something important, like the wedding." Plans. The wedding became their obsession. Every meal, every conversation circled back to it. The flowers, the venue, the guest list, the seating chart. They bragged about how it would be the event of the year. And all the while, they ignored the quiet storm building inside me. It was around this time that my advisor pulled me aside after class. "You've been nominated for the Dean's Honor Award," she said with a smile. My jaw dropped. The Dean's Honor Award wasn't just recognition. It was a ceremony where the university celebrated its top students in front of faculty, alumni, and even local media. The ceremony date: the same weekend as my sister's wedding. When I told my parents, their reaction was predictable. "You're not going," my mom said flatly. "You'll be at the wedding," my dad added. "Family comes first. You can't embarrass us." My sister smirked, twirling her engagement ring. "Don't even think about it. It's everyone important. We'll be at my wedding. Nobody cares about your little school event." I just smiled. "Of course," I said softly. "I'll be there." They didn't notice the spark in my eyes. They didn't notice the plan forming in my mind. Because the dean's ceremony wasn't just an award, it was an opportunity. Spotlight. It's a chance to finally show the world the truth. And I knew exactly when and where I'd do it. The week after my advisor told me I'd been nominated for the Dean's Honor Award. Campus felt different under my feet. The sidewalks were the same. The library still smelled like old paper and coffee. The winter wind still bullied everyone's umbrellas. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was moving with intent. I doubled down on classes, on work, on the tiny growing network of people who believed in me. In the mornings, I shelved books at the campus library. Afternoons, I tutored. Evenings, I manned the closing shift at the cafe. And nights, I chased research deadlines in a computer lab lit by buzzing fluorescents. Exhaustion lingered like a bruise, but so did momentum. Each A on a midterm, each outstanding in a margin, each "could you present this finding to the department next week?" stacked into a proof no one could deny. The dean's office emailed me 2 weeks later. "You've been selected." I stared at the screen so long the letters blurred into shining dots. The award wasn't just a plaque and a handshake. It came with a full academic scholarship, a living stipend, and a research grant I could allocate to a project of my choice. It was, in every sense that mattered, the future my parents had stolen returned to me with interest. I reread the line about the ceremony: Saturday, 5 p.m., the auditorium. The very same afternoon as my sister's wedding, the event my family had crowned as the only thing that mattered. I could almost hear their voices. Family first. You'll skip that silly school function. So I emailed back politely with a request. That felt impossible. I typed, deleted, retyped. Then I told the truth simply, without self-pity. I won't be able to attend the ceremony because my family has scheduled my sister's wedding for the same time. They don't support my education. If there's any way to acknowledge the award outside the auditorium later that evening, perhaps I would be grateful. I hovered over send, then clicked. My heart galloped. An hour later, a reply. "Let's talk tomorrow." Office of the Dean? When I entered the Dean's office, the secretary smiled like she already knew me. The Dean stood, extended a hand, and said my name as if it belonged in important rooms. "I read your note," she said, gesturing to a chair. "I'm sorry you've carried this alone." I didn't cry. I wanted to. Instead, I explained the shape of my life: the late shifts, the scholarships stitched together like a quilt, the family who considered my degree an inconvenience compared to flower arrangements. The dean listened, eyes bright, not with pity, but with a kind of measured heat. We celebrate excellence, she said when I finished. But sometimes, excellence comes with a story people need to hear. Would you allow us to be creative? Creative, how? I asked carefully. We live-streamed the ceremony, she said, but I'm thinking of something else. A satellite acknowledgement. If you can't come to the celebration, perhaps the celebration can come to you. To me, I almost laughed. Where I'll be, there'll be a wedding. The dean smiled, conspiratorial. Yes, where you'll be sounded outrageous. It sounded like a moral physics experiment. It sounded like the exact kind of precise, improbable justice the universe rarely grants unless people make it happen. We spoke logistics. I left with my head spinning and a calendar packed with meetings I'd never imagined having. PR. Alumni relations, the small media team attached to the award. None of it was about humiliating anyone, but Dean was clear on that. It's not retribution, she said. It's recognition. But recognition, handled correctly, carries its own gravity. Meanwhile, life outside campus marched toward the wedding, like a drumline. My parents were a blur of lists and deposits. The dress fittings began to outnumber weekday dinners. My sister's voice took on that shrill, glittering note of someone curating a fairy tale by force. When I mentioned the ceremony one more time, my mother didn't look up from comparing centerpiece options on her phone. Shh, you will be at the wedding, she repeated, as if I were a caterer to be reminded rather than a daughter to be included. I will, I said, and let the truth rest on my tongue like a coin. I would be there. I just wouldn't arrive as their invisibility. The week before the big day, I slept in shards. I dreamed of 2 doors, one labeled family, one labeled future, and both leading to the same room if I pushed hard enough. I woke and ran my lines. Thank the dean, greet the donors, do not rise to bait, keep my voice calm and my shoulders back. This wasn't about anger. This was about presence. On campus, the weight of my work lifted in small, satisfying increments. The research I'd helped compile got accepted to the student showcase. A professor pulled me aside after class and said, "You're presenting at the right conferences. Keep your passport ready." The cafe manager, who had watched me close up for a year, handed me a card with a handwritten note. "Proud of you. Take Saturday off." I used the time to buy a suit. Not a borrowed dress or something I could make work, but a suit cut for my body. The fabric firm and forgiving. The color a deep navy that read as serious under. Bright lights. I stood in the mirror and practiced not looking away from myself. The wedding morning broke bright and merciless. Sun pooled in the street like melted gold. My sister posted a carousel on social media before breakfast ring close-ups. Robe and curls, a caption that read, "The day I've waited for all my life." My mother responded with heart emojis. My father posted a photo of the venue with the line, "Spared no expense for our princess." When I came downstairs, my mother pointed to a garment bag on a chair. "We're that," she said. "What is it? A dress we picked? It will keep you from looking cheap in photos." I lifted the zipper. Sequins winked up at me like beetle. Shells, the neckline was wrong, the color loud, the message clear, fade or clash, but never belong. "Thank you," I said, and zipped it closed. Then I carried the bag upstairs and placed it gently in the back of my closet. I hung my suit on the door. At noon, I arrived at the venue with a tote bag and a careful breath. The ballroom was all ready. Blooming flowers rising like white forests, linen pressed into lakes, crystal catching light in 1,000 small storms. Staff moved with the urgent grace of people used to being invisible until something goes wrong. I whispered thanks to every person who brushed past me, carrying the day on their backs. My parents were a choreography of command. My father barked about seating. My mother corrected any choice that didn't match her vision by half a shade. My sister floated between makeup and photo stations, her smile polished to a mirror that reflected only herself. When she saw me, her eyes flicked down my suit and back up again, amused. "You got the day wrong," she said lightly. "This isn't an interview." "No," I said, "it's a recognition." Her smile faltered just for a second. Then she was swept away by bridesmaids, their laughter marking distance like bells. I found a quiet corner near the service. Corridor texted the contact from the dean's office in position. "Don't force anything. Let the schedule breathe." "We're nearby," came the reply. "We'll follow your lead." "A V has what they need. The dean will handle the room." It tucked my phone away and walked into the pre-ceremony swell of arrivals. Aunts I hadn't seen in years asked if I was still doing school. Uncles clapped my back with performative affection. Someone's friend asked whether I was helping with the guest book. I made small talk that didn't burn, accepted. Compliments meant for the decor, and let myself be boring to the people who'd never asked me anything that mattered. The ceremony itself moved like a machine vows. Polished rings exchanged. Applause loud enough to rattle glass. I watched my sister become a wife in the way weddings often mistake for transformation. I watched my parents glow as if they had minted a queen. And when camera swept past me, I didn't duck. I didn't pose. I simply stood. Cocktail hour bled into dinner in a tide of champagne and chatter. The band found its groove. The DJ tested his mic. The MC announced toasts. My father stood, lifted a glass, and delivered a speech about sacrifice. The word clanged so loudly in my chest I almost laughed. He told the room about working late nights for months to make this day happen. He did not mention my fund. He did not mention my years. He did not mention my name. My mother followed with a speech about tradition. She thanked everyone who contributed to the celebration. She did not glance in my direction. Stewed. Not glance anywhere but the bright stage set for her performance. Then it was the maid of honor's turn, and then a cousin's. And then the clink, clink, clink of spoons against glass, that universal call to attention for some sweet rehearsal of love. The lights warmed, focused on the head table. I checked the time, 5:58. I caught the AV tech's eye. He gave me the smallest nod. The background music faded under the MC's voice. "Before we continue," he said, "we have a brief surprise acknowledgement requested by the bride's family." The bride turned puzzled. My mother's mouth opened in curiosity. My father leaned forward, already hungry for more praise. The ballroom doors at the back eased open on silent hinges. A handful of people entered, two in suits, one carrying a sleek portfolio, one in a university pin I would recognize in any crowd. The dean walked with the calm of someone for whom rooms part. She did not stride. She arrived. Conversation thinned into whispers. The AV screens behind the head table flickered to the university crest, its colors dignified against the soft blush of the wedding palette. The MC blinked, briefly lost, then found his place. "From the university," he said. "We welcome." The dean took the mic with a practiced politeness that took no space from anyone and yet filled the room. "Good evening," she said, voice clear. "My name is Dr. Maris, Dean of Academic Affairs. I apologize for the interruption. I'm here because sometimes life schedules two celebrations at once. And sometimes when the people in the room matter most, we bring one celebration to the other." A hush rippled to the back wall and back again. My sister glanced at my mother. Confused? "What is this?" My mother stood halfway out of her chair, smoothing her dress, smile mounting for a guest she thought had come to praise her planning. The dean looked across the sea of faces, past the cake, past the spray of white roses that had replaced the truth. Her gaze found me without effort. And then, in the hush of crystalline breath, she said my full name, each syllable like a bell. Struck true, every head turned. My parents' faces sharpened, confusion slicing to fear. My sister's mouth opened, then stayed open, a silent "oh" that swallowed the room's oxygen. "Will you join me up here?" the dean asked, her hand outstretched toward the stage, toward light that didn't see her this time, but invited. My legs moved before the old doubt could speak. The aisle felt longer than any hallway I'd ever walked. I passed tables that had ignored me my whole life and chairs that had never held a space for me. At the front, the dean took my hand as if we'd practiced this since the day I was born. Behind us, the AV screens shifted from the crest to a title slide with my name. The award, the words full academic scholarship and research fellowship, and a single sentence in clean white font. Excellence deserves to be seen. The room inhaled as one. And just before the applause broke, the dean lifted the mic again and said, "So the truth would have a witness. This scholar could not attend our ceremony today, because the people who should have been standing with her asked her to stand. Somewhere else, we decided to come to her instead." The sound that followed wasn't clapping, was the audible drop of a mask. My parents didn't blink. My sister's bouquet trembled on the linen, petals loosening like lies. And the dean turned to me, smiling, as the first wave of applause began to build like a storm rolling in from a long, long distance, right before the moment that would change every story my family had ever told about me. The applause rolled through the ballroom like thunder, rattling the crystal chandeliers, shaking the polished silverware, vibrating through the polished marble floor. For a split second, I didn't believe it was for me. For so long, clapping hands had always turned toward my sister. But this time, the sound was mine. The dean squeezed my hand, her smile warm but fierce. "You've earned every note of this," she whispered. I turned slowly, facing the crowd, the relatives who had dismissed me, the family friends who had whispered that I was strange, the neighbors who always heard my parents brag only about my sister. Their eyes weren't blank anymore. They weren't mocking. They were wide, searching even, respectful. The dean lifted the mic again. "It is my great honor to present the Dean's Honor Award to this year's Outstanding Scholar, along with a full scholarship, living stipend, and research fellowship. This recognition marks not just excellence in academics, but resilience, perseverance, and extraordinary drive." Gasps fluttered across the room. Some guests clapped harder, others whispered furiously, heads darting toward my parents like birds startled from trees. I stepped to the podium. My legs were steady, but my voice, when it came, didn't shake. "Thank you," I began, my gaze sweeping the room. This is not how I imagined this moment. I thought I'd be in an auditorium tonight, surrounded by professors and students. Instead, I'm here at the place where my future was traded for someone else's big day. A ripple moved through the guests. My mother's painted smile faltered. My father's jaw tightened. My sister gripped her bouquet so tightly I thought the stems might snap. "I was told I didn't matter," I continued, my voice sharper now. "That my degree was silly, that my dreams were worthless. Compared to flowers and photographs, my college fund, the one I worked for, the one I was promised, was emptied to pay for this wedding." Gasps erupted. People turned in their seats, murmurs rising like a storm. A cousin covered her mouth. An uncle shook his head. My parents sat frozen, their faces stretched into brittle masks. I let the silence stretch before I spoke again. "I won't stand here and beg for their approval anymore. Tonight proves I never needed it. I made it anyway. Not because of them, but in spite of them." The applause rose again, sharp and furious, echoing like justice. I glanced at my sister. Her eyes glittered with rage. She mouthed, "How dare you?" I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. Instead, I turned back to the guests. "So when you leave here tonight, you can remember the flowers, the food, the dancing. Or you can remember this: family doesn't mean sacrificing one child for another. Family doesn't mean silencing someone because their dreams aren't convenient. Family means lifting each other up. And when family fails, sometimes you have to rise alone." The room was electric. A table of distant relatives actually stood, clapping. The dean placed the plaque in my hands, her smile proud and unshaken. Behind me, I heard my father hiss to my mother, "Make them stop this." My mother hissed back, "I can't." My sister's face turned red as whispers rippled through her bridal party. The power dynamic had shifted, and they knew it. After the presentation, the dean squeezed my shoulder one last time. "Your story is yours now," she said softly. Then she and her team left, their presence lingering like lightning after a storm. Dinner resumed, but the air was different. Conversations buzzed, not about the cake or the band, but about me. Relatives leaned toward me, some offering quiet apologies, others offering congratulations. Even strangers approached, curious, respectful. My parents didn't speak to me. My sister avoided my gaze, her perfect smile cracking at the edges for the first time all day. When the DJ announced the first dance, I knew my part here was finished. I slipped quietly toward the doors, my plaque in my hand, my suit catching the warm glow of chandeliers. But before I reached the exit, my father's voice barked out, "Stop right there." I turned. He was standing now, his face red, his fists clenched. "You humiliated us tonight. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I met his gaze steadily. Yes, I told the truth. My mother rushed up, her voice sharp, her mask cracking. "You ruined your sister's wedding. How could you make it about yourself?" I laughed softly, not bitter, just tired. "Funny. That's all you've ever done to me, make everything about her. Tonight, for once, it was about me. And I didn't even plan it that way." The dean did. Gasps rose again. My parents froze, realizing they weren't just arguing with me, they were being watched. 100 eyes were on them, on their fury, on their guilt. And then my sister stormed forward, her bouquet shaking. "You're jealous," she spat. "You've always been jealous of me. Well, guess what? I'm the one getting married. I'm the one everyone came to see." Her voice cracked. The guests didn't nod, they didn't cheer, they just stared. I stepped closer, my voice calm. "You're right. They came to see your wedding, but what will they remember? The flowers, the dress, or the moment the dean called my name?" Her face crumpled, her fury choking her words. She turned and ran back to the bridal table, her veil trembling behind her. I exhaled slowly. My hands were steady. My heart was light. I turned. "Back to my parents. This is the last time you'll get to control my story," I said softly. "You took my fund, but you couldn't take my future. And now you don't get to be part of it." I walked to the doors. This time, no one stopped me. Outside, the night air was cool and sweet. Music and laughter echoed faintly through the doors behind me, but it no longer mattered. I lifted the plaque in my hands, the engraved letters gleaming under the moonlight. It was mine, earned, untouchable. I smiled a real smile, not the tight mask I'd worn for years. For the first time, I felt free. They used my college fund for a wedding. But that night, when the dean called my name, they finally saw what. They tried to bury, "These stole my money," but they couldn't steal my determination. And when people remember that wedding, they don't talk about flowers or cake. They talk about the girl who rose from the ashes and made her whole family. Regret underestimating her. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with friends, and subscribe to Toxic Bloodlines for more shocking tales of betrayal, family secrets, and unforgettable revenge. And let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one.